anyone hear anything? Great. Okay, great. Sorry about that. Okay, so Nottingham 1936. It's more of us here anyway. So Vidmar against Bogoljubov. D4 knight f6, c4 e6. So Nottingham 1936, round 6. And we saw the Queen's Indian defence, knight f3, sidestepping knight c3. So they used to do that way back in 1936. Avoid the Nimza Indian with knight f3. Now we have d5 from Bogo. Bishop g5, bishop b4 check. Bit of a hybrid system now. Knight c3, d takes c4. Inviting white to play this move e4. And now black attacks the centre with c5. And it's pretty sharp, this position now. Milan continues with e5. What is going on here? C takes d4. And now we see check, forcing knight c6. And now white castles queenside. So this is quite novel. This pin looks pretty nasty. There's pressure on the centre as well. Black tries h6 here. It looks like a bit of a... it doesn't look like a great move to have to play h6. White plays e takes f6. After hg, f takes g7. Complex position here, but black is not going to castle. Rook g8. And now knight takes d4 because this loose bishop. This looks quite a good opening for white to have. Bishop d7. And now knight e4, threatening, well, potentially it's getting out of the way for threatening knight takes c6 and queen takes b4. So something has to be done about this bishop. Knight takes d4 doesn't look at all good because the queen takes b4. So queen e7 protecting the bishop. Now knight c2 attacks the bishop again. Black ignores that. He has got it protected at the moment. He plays f5. Milan takes this. And we see f takes e4. Knight takes c6. Bishop takes c6. Queen takes c4. So what's happened out of the opening here? Black's pawn structure seems to be a wreck. So Bogoljubov doesn't seem to have a good position on the surface of things. He can't castle queenside here either, but he can threaten white with rook c8. King sidesteps any trouble, and now we see king f7. Bishop e2, as though this might be handy. Bishop h5 check. King takes g7, check. Nabbing the a pawn. Now after queen f6 it nabs the a pawn, keeping f2 protected as well. Okay, so situation, white's a pawn up. White's got a better pawn structure. Bogo tries rook gf8. And we see queen e3, so ready to, if taking here, we just take on g5. Bishop d5. And now rook c1. Okay. Queen f4. White exchanges rooks. Rook takes c8. And now encourages the exchange of queens, which is taken. King f6. Now white does have an asset here, this potential for a passed pawn which he uses, h4. So he's got a passed h pawn. Is that enough here? b3, which gives the king, of course, nice b2 square maybe. If needed, it blunts this bishop. But king h6. Now we see rook g1. Okay, so if white has a few moves, maybe this sort of thing. Rook f8. Rook g2, defending second rank for a moment. I think black, he looks to be in trouble because I think white's going to be making progress. But Burgo tries something interesting. He tries an exchange sack with rook f3. It undoubles his pawns. So is this tempting? Should white really take this? Well, in the game, he did take it. Bishop takes f3. He takes. And now, so we've got this problem pawn, and the king looks aggressive. Okay, how is this handled? King h5. This king comes to the rescue with king d2 here, just in time for keeping the rook on f2. King e1. Bishop e4. Now the move a4 is played, trying to create another pass pawn maybe. Rook b2, probing for a moment. The king is helping defend against that f pawn. Rook f6, check. Okay, so just the exchange down. Doesn't look as though there's anything black can do at the moment. Bishop c2. Okay, a5 offering the b3 pawn now. Why is this? Well, check to drive the king to the h file. Now king f2. Okay. And here, if e4, I think we have rook, maybe rook b6 is useful. Bishop d5. It looks as though that's not too good for black. But actually, no, after e4, not rook b6, but rook d6. So this maneuver here, trying to attack this guy. Bishop c4, rook d4. And here it becomes clear actually that even, you know, if bishop d3, I think white can just take this, and this is winning. This looks like a winning king and pawn ending. I think. That sort of thing anyway. So basically here we see the bishop retreating to b5. So now black does look really quite lost. The exchange down. King's cut off again. And white is prepared to sack that exchange to get rid of that f pawn. And now it's just easy. And black resigns. So a bit of a crazy opening there. And a very complicated game. So let's try and find a simpler game than that, or should we have a look at this game again, or should we just go on to another game? I think we should probably just go on to another game actually. We've got some notes by Alexander Alkine on this next game, making it a bit more interesting, I think, an added dimension. So this game, the current champion at the time, Dr. Max Over, current world champion in 1936, and he's playing Ruben Fine. So he plays d4. Ruben plays knight f6. Ruben Fine plays knight f6. The c4 e6. Again, this is all the rage. This move, knight f3, played. Sidestepping that Nimzo engine again. d5. After knight c3, none of this bishop b4 here. We see bishop e7. So kind of it's Queen's Gambit decline territory. e3. So this looks like fairly standard position out of the Queen's Gambit declined. D takes c4. knight d5, inviting an exchange of the dark square bishops. That's taken. Takes. Knight e4. And Alekhine comments in the notes for this game, Dr. U. Irva seems to like this invention of mine, which I on the contrary no longer adopt, chiefly because of the possibility of the Capablanca defence, knight 5 to f6, followed by queen b4 check, which leads to a comparatively easy draw. So he gave up this manoeuvre, but in principle it's an attacking manoeuvre to put the knight on g3. Okay. Now in this game, knight 5 f6 is played, knight g3, but now queen b4 check is not played. In fact, black Ruben plays c5. Alekhine writes, but this is, I think, more risky than the queen check, or even Laska's move, which is e5. So white could play now, according to Alekhine, e4, and if c takes d4, then maybe e5. So e4 here, c takes e5, and white has prospects. White's well, this looks quite dangerous, this position. Okay, so that wasn't played. So c5, is it a bit risky? What happened in the game was actually white just castling. He didn't try e4, he just castled. a6, but now the chance for e4 is gone here. According to Alekhine, knight e5 was played. If e5 was played now, then Alekhine indicates really that b5 would help against any e5s. If this bishop goes back, for example, bishop b7, keeping command over d5, that d5 square. And there's no Greek gift here or anything, so it looks as though black is doing well there. So okay, so a6, we see knight e5. This looks like a move Magnus Carlsen has played recently against Anand. This kind of knight e5 idea. So does white get something out of this? Black played c takes d4, giving white the isolated queen's pawn. Okay. And now we see e takes d4, queen d6, protecting the squares, c7, c6, and d5. So this queen is protecting all these squares here. Queen e2, and then we see b5. Okay, not tempted by queen takes d4 here. Ruben finds not tempted. So if queen takes d4, let's see if anyone's awake here. What could white play in this position if I give you 20 seconds starting from now? What would you play here as white? Anyone? Okay, Roham in rook d1. Sonic, knight takes f7. I have to say it's knight takes f7 actually. Knight takes f7 is pretty dangerous. So for example, rook takes, Bishop takes e6. And then this looks dangerous with compensation. With no, actually not just compensation, a winning position for white. So this is quite a strong continuation. In this position, if queen takes e6, that would be a blunder because knight e5 attacks the queen and defends f7. So that's actually no good. But bishop takes e6 is the way to do it here. Bishop takes e6. So we've got this observe this rook fd1. If we try this other suggestion, I don't think well, just queen takes e5. Yeah. So the idea of this queen e2 is, you know, against this pawn chain. All these old themes like in modern games, because we saw recently Magnus Carlsen using this diagonal here to great effect against the king. So this sacrifice on f7 is quite important. The idea here with the queen's pawn, structural weakness, but dynamic compensation here. So we see b5, much safer to play b5. Bishop drops back, and now bishop b7. Rook fd1, rook ac8. The possible occupation of the open file has also to be calculated carefully. White takes now on c8, rook takes c8, and I'm afraid the game finished here. I'm afraid it wasn't. This wasn't one of the exciting games of the round. There was only a glimmer of excitement behind the scenes with knight takes f7, I'm afraid. But here, Max Euwe offered a draw. And even if it was actually, he should really play a move than offer a draw, shouldn't he? So he didn't seem to play a move. He just offered a draw or something, maybe on his previous move. It just seems unusual to offer a draw here. Maybe the rules weren't so strict. But anyway, the champion offered the draw, champion Max Euwe. So white can actually force a draw, apparently, with knight f5 in any case. And we get this kind of continuation, which looks quite dangerous. Here, queen e7, and a perpetual check. Could occur. So white can virtually force a draw in this position if black refuses. Well, depends really. Actually, what? Sorry. Okay. Let's see. Knight f5. What else can black do if he doesn't play takes? I mean, let's say he plays queen f8. This looks too dangerous. Knight takes. Bishop takes looks crushing here. I think. Maybe rook e8. This is getting complicated. Yeah, I'm not sure actually. Rook e8. No. Okay, I'll pop quiz. Okay, what could white do in this position? In the notes, all we have is e takes f5. Given the game wasn't very interesting, what would happen on queen f8, guys? Does anyone see a crushing blow here for white for queen f8? Actually, I think I see one. Sorry, I'm being silly. I think I've spotted it myself. I'm being silly. Yeah, I know this is unfair. My blitz and bullet ratings seem higher than most of you guys, but I think I've seen a winning tactic here. Can you guys see it as well? If I give you 20 seconds starting from now. Knight e6 is not a legal move. What do you mean knight e6? You can't play knight takes e6 here. Knight e6. Anyone? Anyone else? Knight takes f7. Yes. Knight takes f7. So if takes, we skewer the queen. And if takes here, that looks really dangerous. Maybe we just go for the rook. It looks a bit unpleasant. This is even stronger. Oh yes, no. Actually, we can go for this bishop. In fact, so we go the check, and we get this bishop. And if bishop d5, I think we can just take that and then play check here. So this looks pretty good. This is to be avoided. So after knight f5, this virtually does force a draw, because if queen c7, we've got knight e7 check. So there's not too many options here. So very fair draw if he can virtually force it here with knight f5. It just shows the dynamism of this bishop and this diagonal, almost like forced draw. Okay, so he just offered the draw and it was accepted anyway. Okay, so let's go on to another game. There's one which is 77 moves, one which is 36 moves. I think we'll go to the 36 move one. So the great Mikhail Botvinnik against Salomon Floor. So Mikhail Botvinnik, one of the up and coming players of this time. He's white, he plays e4, and we see an Alekhine defense. So knight f6, Mikhail pushes forward with e5, knight e5 d4, d6. Now he doesn't go crazy with c4. Mikhail Botvinnik plays actually knight f3 here. This pin occurs, bishop g4, unpinning with bishop e2, and now black played c6 after castles. Now black voluntarily gives up the bishop. Bishop takes f3. So now d takes e5. He's creating kind of weakness now. This e5 pawn a bit subject to attack. First it's fixed, v6. There's no problem bishop on c8 here. So we see queen e2, queen c7, c4 driving the knight somewhere, goes to e7, bishop g4 now, which actually unleashes the f pawn for a potentially dangerous attack with f4 and f5. We see knight d7, f4, okay, h5, bishop h3. Now black castled. So Mikhail has a position here where there does seem to be a pleasant blockade on f5. Bishop e3 and now knight f5, not minding at all bishop f5. That is actually used here by Mikhail. Bishop takes f5. And now queen f2, stopping black from playing bishop c5. I don't mean, it's not to do with winning pawns, rather to stop this bishop c5 business perhaps, or knight c5, because actually knight c5 to e4 might be quite unpleasant for white. I wouldn't want to give up the dark square bishop. So queen f2, we see queen a5, which maybe kind of renews, you know, the threat of bishop c5 or knight c5. We see knight d2, and now there's this knight b3 to contend with on knight c5. So black avoids that with knight b6, a3, and now rook d3 threatening, I think. Or is it? It's not. I'm not sure it is actually. Is he threatening something like this? I'm not sure he is, although this next move seems interesting in that respect. Off the rook fd1, is this some sort of misprint here at move 19? Or is it a trap? Let's have a look at this. In the game we see bishop e7. I think it might be just a trap. If rook takes e3, and let's have it as a pop quiz here. So what would you play with white if you had this position? If I give you 20 seconds starting from now, white to play in this position. You've just lost the bishop. So what would you do here? Yeah. Okay. Sonic. Well done. I think let's move Rahemin. Yes, I think stop this bishop c5. I don't think this is too pleasant, this skewer, but white has not just a saving resource, a winning resource, to play b4 here, and that really cuts out that c5 square, and we can safely just take. And I think it's hopeless to do this. We just take this and then it's the same thing. So okay, so we see bishop e7 from black. c5, knight d5, knight c4, which looks nasty actually, attacking the queen, attacking the rook, while black takes, rook takes. Now queen a4 attacking the rook and the knight, and that's protected with rook c1. h4. Now we see b4, h3, g3. Is this pawn going to be useful, eyeing that g2 square at some point? Rook d8. And now white, Mikhail offers an exchange of queens. He's double attacking the queen and the f5 pawn. So black takes, rook takes, and now plays king d7. Maybe the king's going to be useful on e6 here without getting mated. King f2, king e6. It looks like a lovely blockading scenario. Yeah. So bishop c1, g6. Do you think white can make any progress here? If I asked you that question and gave you 20 seconds to think about this position, do you think it should just be a draw? Or is white better, or is black better? It looks okay. I don't want to bias it, but what would you say here? How would you evaluate this? Anyone? I think it's quite peaceful myself. Okay. Bishop b2, it looks quite peaceful. Knight a5, rook b8. Okay, a bit of a threat there. Now the knights are victable. Ah, yes, there's a comment, knight d6 looked good. It's not actually, it wasn't actually played. In the game we get this continuation now, and after bishop f8 agreeing a draw, I'm afraid, at move 36. But let's go back and ask this question here. So white's not doing much here. But let's go back. Why wasn't knight d6 tempting. Let's see, knight d6. I guess, you see, we're left with this potentially bad bishop. I think we can just take here. Let's imagine we'll take like this. Maybe just king d7. And these pawns are all on light squares away from the bishop. So I think black just plays rook e8 next. So you say rook e2, rook e8. And I don't think this is that great because this bishop is just stuck on the same colour as its pawns. Furthermore, black might be able to play b6 and weaken this pawn. You can imagine if this pawn's weakened, then later it could be attacked. So I'm not entirely sure this is a great position for white. I don't know if Jerowicz, you want to argue your point or just accept that. I'm not sure this is anything special. So yeah, I'm afraid this round wasn't the most exciting so far. Quite a few draws, to be honest, in this round. Let's have a look at another game. So, okay. William Winter against C.H. Alexander, and we're privileged to have notes by Alexander Alekhine again. Okay, so d4, and so William Winter playing white, British player, C.H. Alexander, I think it's one of the British player, the two Brits playing against each other this round. c4, e6, now knight c3, not minding the Nimzovich pin. a3, very forceful. White gets that bishop off, but has doubled pawns, of course. Now, Alekhine writes of this, as the continuation shows, this attempt to meet white's two bishops by simple development moves is not quite sufficient. Instead, black may adopt one of the following three plans. So let's go back here. These are Alekhine's plans back in 1936 for this position as black. He gives b6 with the idea to fight against white's e4, because then we'd be putting pressure on e4. He also gives the move c5 as another plan in order to fix white's double pawns, or he gives another plan, d6, in order to play as soon as possible e5. So these are three plans given by Alexander Alekhine. But this move is a little bit maybe planless. Okay, let's see why. Queen c2, d5. After this, white has no more trouble concerning the two c-pawns, while his pleasure, the two bishops, still remain. The pleasure of the two bishops still remain. Yes, bishop g5, c5, e3. Black takes on d4, hoping to be able to play e5. E takes d4, knight c6, knight f3, rook e8. So black's hoping to play this e5 move. Now black, unfortunately for white, unfortunately for black, knight e5. The right move, which mechanically prevents the e-pawn's advance. Okay, so d takes c4. Logical but not quite sufficient. Knight takes c6. The crisis of the game. So Alexander gives here a different move, a different approach here. To play the move f4, if white plays f4, So let's imagine in this position, knight takes d4 looks a little bit on the dangerous side because white's king's still in the center, attacking the rook. Check. Knight e4, threatening mate. But here, white has an important resource. Can you see it? Which is in Alexander Alekhine notes for white to maintain the advantage. So white to play in this position. What would you play here with white? Anyone? I'll give you 20 seconds. So black sacrificed the piece. Yeah, it looks as though this is a very important move here, defending and attacking. Because the thing is, if we'd play rook f1, I believe there's the move knight takes g5, because this knight's loose. So if f takes, queen takes. So I think it's important to know that there's knight g4 here. So just attacking the queen, and this knight's loose. So black's gonna lose that knight. Okay, so well done, Rahimin and Sonic. Okay, so if this doesn't work, I think this is why Alexander thinks this f4 is a good move, because white could next play something like, you know, maybe rook d1 and maybe bishop takes c4 later. It looks pretty dangerous, this f4, but it wasn't played. Instead we get a kind of tension reducing move, unfortunately. Knight takes c6, which Alexander Alekhine calls the crisis of the game. Doesn't improve white's position. Are you all convinced that the move f4 here is much more dangerous? Okay, let's have a look at the game continuation. I don't think it's anything to write home about. He gets that pawn, h6. But if he had played e5 here, there's, without appreciable profit, as Alexander says, white can castle, e takes, c5. It's not that hot, the position. Okay, this is not very good. So black, maybe there's no point in playing e5, so he just plays h6. Bishop goes back. Now e5 here. Castles e takes. C takes down bishop e6. If black had dared play queen takes d4, this is quite amusing again for winning the isolated queen's pawn. And what's the punishment if you lose this d pawn? We saw some tactical punishment in another game. What could white play in this position if I give you 20 seconds starting from now? Anyone? No, not bishop takes f7, Ramin. No, bishop takes f7 doesn't do anything, I think. You just take it. No, what we need to play is this bishop takes h6. because we're trying to celebrate this pin here. So if takes, check. So if we go here, get mated. We go here. Well, this looks pretty good. Is it crushing? It looks pretty good for bishop takes f7, maybe. So this is to be avoided. I don't know anything absolutely crushing here. Queen takes h6. We got knight h7. So I'm not entirely sure about that one. But yeah, I think just bishop takes f7 starts to be quite dangerous. Okay, so there's these little punishments for winning pawns here in the centre. Black played bishop e6. And now we see bishop a6, which just looks a bit weird. White tries to complicate matters, but without success, Alexander Alekhine writes. As the two weaknesses, white's d pawn and black's c pawn are about equal inconveniences. The position comes down, therefore, in a few moves to perfect balance. Queen b6, queen d3, rook a d8, bishop e3, knight d5, bishop c4. Because if rook a b1, we've got a little deflection, bishop f5. So if takes, this is a lovely blockade. Okay, so we see actually mass exchanges now. Queen takes f7, rook f4, rook b8, sorry, rook b3 and h3, and they agreed a draw here actually. It looks pretty drawish. If black continue with, there's a perpetual check here in this position in any case. Okay, so they agreed a draw around about here after h3. Sorry, it wasn't the most exciting round, round 6. Quite a lot of draws. Shall we? Would you like to carry on? Should we carry on next week? Then I promise you a more exciting round next week. There was only one decisive game in round 6, which we saw to start off with. But you know, I thought these games are quite interesting anyway. To see the style of the time, you know, the openings that they used, etc. Okay, so I hope you have a good week, and see you next time. See you next week. Thanks very much.